good, y'all? It's your boy Jay back at it again, and today we got how school makes people dumber by Humanity. You already know what the deal is, man. Shout out to Humanity for the original video. Get tapped on both Jays here and Jays there, and follow me on my socials. You know what I'm saying? We going crazy. But that being said, let's get right into this video.
How did we invent the phone? How did we send a man to the moon? How did we invent the wheel? Was it from memorizing textbooks, or was it from creativity and thinking outside the box? In the 1960s, NASA created a test to measure creative intelligence. They found that 2% of adults qualify as creative geniuses. And for children who've never gone to school, 98% qualify as creative geniuses. Every child is born a genius. But as they grow older, that natural ability fades away. Why is that? Every day a kid goes to school.
It's pretty obvious that American education system was designed in the industrial era to produce factory workers. And back in the day, factory workers were about being able to follow rigorous tasks at most bare minimum to the best of your ability. Like you should, you know what I'm saying? You clock in when the bell tells you to clock in, you clock out when the bell tells you to clock out. You follow simple directions efficiently, quickly. You don't ask questions, all that. Because back in the day, that system worked for industrialization. We needed a bunch of workers to do the same task repeatedly, day in and day out. But that doesn't work anymore.
But they become less intelligent.
All I'm saying is that the system that worked in the Industrial Revolution isn't working now because nigga, the game has changed, bro.
That sounds crazy, I know. But if you take a deep look at how modern education actually works, you'll see exactly what I mean. Our schools are here to make students work and memorize, but not to think critically and creatively. And that suppression of thinking has a negative impact on our intelligence. Although schools might increase logical and verbal intelligence, other categories of intelligence will decline because of school, particularly creative intelligence. And that's a big problem. Our schools need to be encouraging and nurturing divergent thinking. Remember when you were a child and you could imagine entire fantasy worlds and creatures and characters all in your head? You could breathe life and stories into your tiny plastic toys and play pretend for hours without getting bored. That's not just childish behavior. That's the creative genius within every human being. The ability to rapidly generate original ideas with ease and having an endless imagination. So why does it go away as we get older? Because if we don't practice and use our creativity, that natural ability will fade away. Instead of divergent thinking, our schools exclusively focus on convergent thinking. We're constantly reminded that there's only one answer to a question.
That's the part of the problem I have with school. I understand that school has classes where you can be more creative, like art is an example. I think art and music are one of the best classes when it comes to just being able to do what you want to do and the way you want to do it, right? However, when it comes to just schools and these tests and tests, nigga, ain't nobody trying to take tests all day. Yes, if you know how to take tests and you study, it's an easy grade, but at the same time, it's repetitive, it's boring. You're not learning the material, you're kind of just regurgitating that shit, and then you're forgetting it. Which is why students will do really good in geometry one year, summer break goes by, and then they go into algebra 2 and they just get in their ass because they ain't study over anything over the break. Because why would they? What is the point of studying if there's no test? Because that's how students been programmed. The American education system trains students to take tests. That's what it is, bro. I ain't gonna lie.
There's only one correct way to solve a problem. When schools give us tests, what kind of questions do they give us? It's not imagine this questions. It's not questions that involve deep thinking and brainstorming. No, we're given multiple choice questions. There's only one right answer, and if you choose anything else, you're punished. And when it's not multiple choice questions, it's math and science questions where we're asked to solve a problem. But we can't just solve it any way we want. No. If the method we use is not the method that our teachers taught us,
oh my god, yo, Delta Math be pissed. This give me flashbacks to Delta Math, bro. Delta Math, I ain't gonna lie, Delta Math be on straight dingling when it comes to their grading system. And nigga, I solve it, nigga, I type it in damn near the exact same way. It's the same answer. These niggas gonna tell me, no, it's not the right answer. You got it wrong. Nigga, I do it again. I do a different method. It's wrong. And they have this little fuck ass method where if you get one wrong, then they take one off. So I be 2 out of 5. I'm cooking. I'm in my bag. I get one wrong, and now it's 1 out of 5. I'm losing progress. I look at it. You forgot this very specific number. That shit be pissing me off, bro. I'm wasting my time because y'all niggas got this very rigid ass system of grading, bro. Nigga, I do negative 2.5 and this counts it wrong. It's because I didn't put negative 5 or 2. Nigga, it's the same answer. It's the same thing, bro.
And we get a bad score, even if our final answer is correct. I'm not sure what it's like in other countries, but in the US, every student has to suffer through Common Core math. In math class, we're forced to use confusing methods that involve multiple steps to solve simple math problems. For example, if a child is asked, what is 6?
Nigga, just, say it's negative 3. Imagine you count to 1 to 10, right? 9 is greater than 6, but how much is it greater? By 3. So if you reverse this shit, 9 minus 6, you get 3. Now just add the negative symbol because you're going into depth.
6 minus 9. The child can't simply write negative 3. They have to draw this entire diagram as their answer. And
yeah,
if they
fuck doing any of that shit. Like, I'm not
simply
doing all
write
that
negative
If I know the answer, I'm gonna just write that bitch down.
3. They have to draw
I'm
this
not about to draw a
entire
whole
diagram
number line for your ass. You can eat a whole bag of giraffe nuts if you think I'm drawing a whole number line to answer this simple ass
answer.
problem.
And if they try to solve it in any other way, they get a bad score. Now imagine how this affects a child's creativity when they're constantly reminded that the only
I don't think in my math class, my teachers weren't too on the nose about what method you got. I feel like a lot of my teachers, my math teachers, so long as you got the correct results, they don't really mind what equations or what method you use to solve this.
way to do things is the way taught by their teacher. Anything else is incorrect. If we condition a child like this for years and years, they'll stop trying to solve things using their own ideas. They'll stop thinking for themselves. If a child can discover their own unique method to solving a math or science problem, that is amazing. It's an incredible feat of creativity and brilliance that should be praised and rewarded. But instead, our school system punishes it. We give this child a bad score because they didn't conform to the curriculum. We punish genius and we reward conformity. Even when we're writing essays, the creativity is stripped away. Essays are a form of expression. Writing essays—
I ain't gonna lie, on my essays, I be yapping like a hoe, bro. Bro, I'm writing an essay right now. It's about Dragon Ball Z. I'll tell y'all more about it later on, you know what I'm saying? But it's about Dragon Ball Z and how it relates to finding hope, right? Vegeta finding hope and changing his character because of Goku's influence. I'm yapping like a hoe, because since I'm actually hella passionate about Dragon Ball Z, I'm really yapping, bro. I'm using all my ball knowledge on that shit, boy. That hoe gonna be the maximum. I think the least is 400 words, nigga. That shit gonna be 16,000 words. Now I'm writing a whole book. What are you talking about?
is an art. But in school, we're told that there's only one correct way to write an essay, and that's by following the rubric. Did you include a thesis? Did you include a conclusion? Did you organize your essay? It doesn't matter how good your essay is. If you didn't follow the rubric, then you get a bad score. If you ask an 8-year-old to write an essay, they'll write a whimsical, unique commentary that will make any topic feel silly and colorful. Ask a college student to write an essay, and it's gonna feel like it was generated by—
The thing is, when it comes to being super strict on essays, I don't like. The problem with that, when you're super strict on yourself for essays, is that you lose a lot of that you lose a lot of just, because you're trying to condense so much knowledge in such a short form that you lose a lot of it. Right? I really like, when I want someone to read my essay and be like, I fully understand what this nigga's talking about. I don't want it to just be you read it, then you barely know what it. No, I want you to really understand what I'm talking about, where I'm coming from, all that.
ChatGPT, because their creativity has been completely drained
now,
from
I
their—
get where schools are coming from. They say condense it. If you have a lot of words, condense it. Make it easier to read. Make it make more sense. And I do agree with that to some extent. However, I still think that students should be able to write longer essays if they feel that it's necessary to get their full point across.
So, after years of school, schools need to teach students that there will always be multiple ways to go about a problem, because that's how the real world works. There's never just one correct answer. Because our schools constantly drill into our heads that there's only one correct way to do things, we often forget that there's a lot of good ways to make a living. Students are conditioned to never think outside the box, so they believe the only way to make money is by climbing the corporate ladder. But in reality, there's a lot of ways to make money. Freelance work, blue-collar work, social media, the gig industry, starting a business. Because so many students lack the ability to think for themselves, they're unaware of this bigger world of opportunities. Another way school decreases our intelligence is by forcing us to spend the vast majority of our time memorizing pointless information. dates, terms, equations, names, geography, and so on. This is a problem in pretty much every country's education system, and it needs to stop. First of all, we're going to forget almost all the information we memorized after we graduate. And even if we do remember the information, most of it is pointless and won't be useful to us. Should we teach kids about taxes, how to invest, and how to apply for a job? No, how could they possibly need that information? No, let's teach them that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Second, we live in an age where everyone has the internet and AI is on the rise. We don't need to memorize every single detail because we can just...
Now the thing is about AI, right? Someone might disagree, but I still think memorizing these details and these facts isn't entirely bad. Now I know nigga won't try to crucify me, hear me out. Am I saying that you should have to memorize every single detail? No. What I am saying is that memorizing these details allows you to fully understand what you're getting into. Let's say biology. You're talking about ribosomes, eukaryotes versus prokaryotes, ribosomes, phases of the cellular respiration, right? You're getting really in depth with this. I feel like it's not too bad because it lets you fully know what you're getting yourself into. Like you're getting a taste of it, right? To understand what this subject is about, what it's going to take to memorize it. Same thing with math. If you don't like math, then you don't have to take it past a certain point, right? Because I feel like once you get into your freshman or sophomore year, you should be allowed to pick whatever class you want without having to be required to have this many math credits. Because I feel like that prevents students from doing what they want to do because they have to take these classes they don't want to take in order to meet a certain requirement. And I know someone might say, well, this student's not going to pick any classes. They're going to fail. Okay, let them fail. And I know that sounds crazy on paper, but we have to understand is that once you get to high school, it's up to you to decide whether you want a life. Whether you decide you want to go to school and do something productive, rather do freelance work, blue-collar jobs, crime and corporate ladder, entrepreneurship, etc. It's up to you to decide what you want to do in your life. I think the problem with some schools is they try to hold the kid's hand all the way, and now the kid has no form of self-discipline, self-agency, and doesn't know how to think or make action for her or himself, which is an issue, right? Because that's what you're doing as an adult. You're making your own decisions, you're making your own judgments, you're doing your own life. And I think the problem for a lot of schools is that when you give students this little amount of freedom and then they get a good like a huge swath of it, they're not going to know how to act because they've never had that before.
Just search it up or ask AI. We spend almost all our time memorizing pointless information and very minimal time actually digesting this information and thinking about the why and how of what we learned. And that lack of thinking
I also think it's because schools require you to have a certain number of test grades, and teachers have to then alter their programs to what they would want to fit this curriculum or the schools. So now you got to do this very quickly, do this very quickly, do this very quickly. Because we need to have a test. We got to prepare you for the test. What happens is that a lot of students and some teachers get overwhelmed by this system because they don't have time to properly teach. The student then has to go home, study, do homework, and spend even more time doing school and research and shit, which should be done at the building. But since the schools have to streamline to get to tests and test grades, the student doesn't have time to do everything they need to do.
Damages both our education and our intellect. I don't remember a single thing from my high school economics class. That class didn't add anything to my life. This 80-minute video essay about Garfield left a significant impact on me and added a lot to my life. Why? Because the Garfield video provoked thought and emotion out of me. My economics class didn't. So if we want our students to actually remember and care about what they're learning, we need them to do less memorizing and more thinking. Albert Einstein said this: "Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid." Albert Einstein also said this: "Everybody is a genius after subscribing to Domanity." Our school system is forcing fish to climb trees. The truth is, our societies don't need highly educated individuals. Our societies need creative and intelligent individuals. With the current rise of AI, our academic and memorization abilities will be useless, as AI will outperform us in those areas. But you know what AI doesn't have? Creativity. Let's say one wants to go into marketing. They don't need to know anything about calculus or physics to be good at that job. They don't need to know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. What do they need? Creative intelligence. They need to be able to brainstorm quickly and find new and innovative approaches to selling a product. A creative genius with minimal education will perform far better at this job than a highly educated individual with minimal creativity. But if a person wants to go into the marketing industry, they'll need to spend years rigorously studying arbitrary academics in school. And by the time they finish all of that, their creative intelligence will have significantly decreased. It's a completely counterproductive system. And even with jobs like doctors, engineers, and lawyers, I think we all can agree that these jobs need higher education. But even so, on the path that one takes to pursue these jobs, they have to put up with a lot of BS that's irrelevant to their career. A person studying to become a surgeon shouldn't be forced to study economics, world history, calculus, or computer science. A very common criticism of the school system I hear is that our school system is only designed to create workers who follow the rules and obey the authorities. This might surprise you, but honestly, I'm okay with that. That's a very valid reason for our school system to exist. We need workers. Without workers, our societies would collapse. But even so, our school system is failing at creating workers. Like I said, most workers don't need to be highly educated. We need workers who are creative and intelligent in their own field. This applies to all areas of the workforce. Even blue-collar workers benefit from creative intelligence. When you're building a house, or fixing a pipe, or repairing electrical systems, there's bound to be moments when you have to use your own unorthodox methods to get the job done. In other words, creativity. School makes students less intelligent. It takes the creative, brilliant minds of young children and transforms them into logical, conforming thinkers who can't come up with original ideas. So how do we fix this system? Well, it's really not that hard. Like I said earlier, schools and teachers need to show students how there's multiple correct ways to do things. We need to give less multiple choice questions and more open-ended questions. Questions that actually require the students to think and brainstorm rather than just recite what they meant.
That's fair. The thing about fixing the school is that it's obviously easier said than done. Cause I can't just say teachers need to teach better. That's not even that's a non-answer answer. We need to think more open-ended. But I think the way you can fix schools is in some degree, right? Obviously, I'm not an educational expert. I'd have to do my own research into school and how it affects kids and all that. However, I think the solution is, especially in high school and later in middle school, you let kids do what they need to do. Give them more freedom. Because the biggest issue, you also need to fund schools more so they have more incentivization to let students do what they need to do, right? Because when you give students on such a tight leash, the moment they're let off, they run wild. Right? They don't know how to act because they never had authority before. So I think it's very important to let students have open-ended questions. Let them do things how they need to do them so they can develop their own way.
Memorized. We need students to think more and memorize less. Ask them thought-provoking questions. Ask them to interpret the information for themselves and test them using these questions instead of multiple choice questions. And lastly, students should be doing more creative projects instead of constantly memorizing information. Ask them to create stories, music, paintings, business ideas, creative designs, and so on. Some might say that's a waste of time, but
another video posted. That one took a long minute to explain. I ain't gonna lie, that shit was 40 minutes long, my nigga. God damn. Oh yeah, but we keep pushing. We keep pushing.
But I'd argue that these activities are significantly more meaningful and helpful to a student's career than just memorizing information that they'll forget as soon as they graduate. Of course, students still need to learn how to read and write and do math. Those are essential life skills. But anything that isn't essential for a student to learn should only be an optional elective class. Our school system is terrible, but there's actually a system that's much worse. It's a system
it has to be worse.
That's destroying the USA as we speak. America's prison system. Click right here to watch my video about
we might check that out later, but that being said, shout out to Manny for making this video. And always, it's your boy Jay. Stay healthy, stay wealthy, stay blessed, and I'm out.